unique sounding songs outside of I Saw the Wolf for being an acoustic track. I just said I saw the wolf.
I saw the wolves.
You know what really makes us mad is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to Punk Lotto Pod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
And I am your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
Joining us this week is Amanda Starling, the host of the podcast Angry Grrrl Music of the Indie Rock Persuasion. Amanda, how are you tonight?
I am great. I am chilling with a puppy on my lap, and I'm talking to y'all, so this will be great.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on. For those unfamiliar with your show, why don't you kind of tell people what it's all about and what you talk about on your show? I'm assuming indie rock, but
that's a very, very great guess, and that's correct. So I have this weekly podcast called Angry Grrrl Music of the Indie Rock Persuasion. I bring on different non-men, people of color, LGBTQIA folks who are all involved in the independent music community. They can be musicians, artists, people who work at labels or do promotion, or maybe they are writers, photographers, anybody who's just like really contributing to independent music and has a generally underrepresented voice in the scene. The idea is just to really build up a platform where people get to talk about the things that matter to them and their projects. And sometimes we talk about how much like they love their dog, and sometimes we talk about like fucked up shit like the patriarchy. So it just really depends on mood and what my guest is feeling and stuff. But yeah, that's probably a good explanation for it.
yeah, you've talked to a lot of really cool people on your show. Like you've even talked to a few friends. We were talking beforehand, but you had on Katrina from Expert Timing and Sarah from All Right, who we've had on our show.
Yeah,
and they're both great. And we even have a few more guests lined up for this month that have been on your show. I don't want to spoil who they are yet, but
I'll just say, yay! You all should be stoked. These are really awesome people. And yeah, Sarah and Katrina are two of my favorite people I've met in music. They are absolute angels, and I'm so lucky to actually call them friends, like outside of music stuff now, it feels like. So
yeah, and you've had like other people like Typesetter and Fresh and Retirement Party, and like I was scrolling through like every episode you had just to like see who all had been on, and I was like, man, all these bands are so great. Like when I was thinking about reaching out to other podcasts for like possible guests on our show, yours was definitely on our short list of potential people to have on. So we're really thankful that you're doing it.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, it's hearing you rattle off all those names just got me like really excited again. Now that I think about it, just because it's like sometimes I'm still mind blown that I've even met these people, much less recorded them on my show.
There is like a nice little like, wow, I can't believe we got, so-and-so to come on the show. And so it's cool to know that other people experience that too.
Right. And like, I think for me, just for what I do, I have this like equal parts excitement. I feel like between whenever I land somebody on the show who like I've admired for like a long time and who's like inspired me, as much as like I have that same excitement for like some young person who's like starting out in their involvement in independent music. And it's like I try to give the same level of hype to like an established career artist as I do to like the teenager who launched a record label out of their like high school bedroom, you know?
Yeah, and I think you do a really good job of it because like I if you just I'm telling everyone here, just subscribe to Angry Grrrl on whatever podcasting platform you prefer. And like even if you don't know who the band is, give the episode a listen because there's a chance they're really good. So
yeah, I believe that. That's for sure. every band that I've had on, every person I've met has just like blown me away and inspired me. And that's all I really want for my listeners is like just for them to feel that same excitement whenever they discover a new band or they find a new voice that they're excited about or that means something to them or that connects with them.
Awesome. Dylan, what'd you do this week? Anything?
Nothing really. Nothing new to report. January went by really fast. It feels like we're already halfway through February, but time is just flying by, and so nothing new.
Well, I guess we can jump into the format of the show then. This is the show where using a number generator and the Rate Your Music punk charts, we choose one album and one EP at random to discuss. And as usual, we like to take a look at the charts for the years that our albums have come out in. So this week we are talking about the year 2010.
I wanna smash my face into the goddamn radio. Bring out some change on me. Sometimes I feel like I should have said no. 'Cause it's New Year's Eve and 4 degrees, we're stranded, hopeless. I'll do my best to live my life without regret.
Right off the bat, we talked about 2010 on our Best of the Decade episode not too long ago, and we were discussing it as a kind of great year for punk and punk adjacent music. So is there anything on this list that jumps out at you for like something you really dug or you think is important?
I'm scrolling through the list right now. I guess the first one that kind of like stood out to me was Snowing, because that was a band I got into much later on. For everybody listening, I got into probably like punk, DIY, independent music proper, like closer to 2012. So this was a little bit pre me being involved in that. I like to think of 2010 as a lost year for me because I was like heavily engrossed in studying for the AP US history exam. Like it was a make or break me kind of thing, which was really pitiful, honestly. I was the world's most boring teenager, and that's why I missed out on all this. But yeah, Snowing's an incredible band, and it's so cool that they're listed on this chart. The Menzingers, Chamberlain Waits, that was a record that really resonated with me when I was really getting into like punk and kind of the beginning. Let me see what else is here. There's a bunch of good stuff. Oh God, number 40, Iron Cheek.
Hell yeah.
Holy shit. That Not Like This is a record that I feel like shaped so much of my attitudes toward music in general. And yeah, that's a brilliant record. I still jam to it every now and then, honestly. That's probably one of the few that I'm seeing on this list of like I actually revisit probably several times a year at least. Yeah.
That one was, I think I probably described it as the first instant classic punk record of the past decade. I mean, it's evergreen. I mean, honestly.
It's true.
I know I listened to it probably multiple times every year since it came out. So it's a really good one.
It was a bit of a like decade defining album too. Like there were so many records that came out after this that were heavily inspired by Iron Cheek. I mean, I know a lot of that comes from the Latterman influence as well, but with Iron Cheek and RVIVR kind of starting at the exact same time, like those two bands like shaped like at least the first half of this decade, I think.
Yeah, I would say Iron Cheek and actually RVIVR especially. Now that band, I probably would not be where I am right now without them. Especially like their first records and stuff. Like I think I remember listening to that record and just feeling like my life was changed completely. And I feel the same way about Iron Cheek, honestly, too. Those two bands really, I think, were what helped kind of draw me into what we consider to be punk now. Most of like my 2010 listening was shaped by teen night dramas, especially like The OC and One Tree Hill. Like everybody remembers and everybody was for it. So I don't feel embarrassed about talking about it anymore. But like, so it was more so like the cameos of like Fall Out Boy, Jack's Mannequin, of course, for like being the One Tree Hill, the OC being like Death Cab for Cutie. That shit was iconic. But like that was kind of a little bit more where my taste was at. And I was like pretty much pop punk garbage. Because like it was just accessible and easy for me as a teenager. But like I feel like a lot of albums that are standing out to me that are on like this list are ones that like I like to refer to them as almost like later realizations. Like this is a record I found maybe 3 to 5 years later and I fell in love with it and it happened to be in this year. So I think of like Grown Ups is on here at like number 58, More Songs.
Yeah.
That changed things.
Such a short-lived band too. Like they had More Songs and then what? There was an EP before and an EP after, and that's it, right?
It's devastating.
They're one of those bands that I'm like, why aren't they back together? Like Snowing's back together doing some shows. How about we get some grown-up shows going too?
Yeah, and my heart would like shatter in a million pieces and come back together if Grown Ups reunited. It probably won't ever happen, but that's exactly how it would go.
Yeah, and then like Two Spaces Down. I don't know if you listen to this record. Castavet put out The Echo and the Light, and that's one of my favorite records of that entire year as well. It's like a heavier version of that Midwestern emo revival that was really booming in the beginning of the decade, and that record is just fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, I didn't get into Castavet quite as much, but I do respect it.
Yeah,
I'll put it that way. Yeah. Yeah, I would say that. I'm not seeing them like on the list or anything. Hopefully I'm not like breaking the rules, but like, so 2 Florida bands that released music in 2010 that just like stole my heart and probably helped cultivate my love of our local scene were Look Mexico and Fake Problems.
Did they release
Which
albums
Fake
that year?
Problems was that?
Yeah.
I wonder. Sorry.
Which Fake Problems record is that?
Let me look it up again because I forgot to jot down the name of it. Just a sec.
Rate Your Music has a really bad habit of not. It's user based, so like a lot of times people don't tag.
Real Ghosts Caught on Tape.
Yeah.
Real Ghosts Caught on Tape came out in 2010, and then that was a great record.
I'm surprised that's not higher. That it's not showing up at all. I've gone back quite a few pages and I still haven't seen that list. I just skipped it, but
I bet the users have it labeled something like alternative rock or
yeah. Well, that's
probably honestly because like you think about it, it's like Fake Problems was such like a jumping point for so many bands. Without Fake Problems, you wouldn't have had like You Blew It, for example, just because like those bands just kind of fed off of each other. Same goes for like a Dikembe and so many others. I'm very proud of the Florida DIY scene, if you can't tell. There's so many other bands out there that, like, of course, have grown out of, like, that kind of, like, Florida emo scene and stuff. But, yeah, it's just, like, that's just always one where I feel like I gotta call out, like, Fake Problems. And then, like, Look Mexico, they put out To Bed to Battle, which is an awesome record, too. So.
Yeah, according to Rate Your Music, they have it tagged as indie rock. So, yeah.
Indie rock, okay.
Yeah. They do that with AJJ a lot too. Like they tag them as like folk. I'm like, they're okay, kind of.
Well,
but
punk.
Folk. Right. Like Simon and Garfunkel. Like it's not. It's definitely something different from just folk.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. They have Look Mexico labeled indie rock as well. So. Good job, Rate Your Music. You don't know what punk is. We've built our entire show around it.
That's okay. I'll just design you a cooler app someday.
Yeah, there we go. Like we can add indie rock to the list, but then we get like a ton of stuff that's like not really punk. It's so I don't know the best way to do it.
I feel
weed
that.
Out the corporate indie rock, and if we're doing like 2010, that's going to be like stomp clap, mainstream.
I try to forget about that part of mainstream, but I mean, I can't. Yeah, the thing is,
I
is
hear
like,
it all the time.
Right.
The station that we have been using on at work has been nothing but like The Head and the Heart and like that kind of stuff, and it's exhausting.
I mean,
so
I was working in a Barnes & Noble in 2010, so I heard plenty of that kind of stuff.
Oh my god. Wow. Yeah. I mean, the closest I ever got to ever enjoying that, and like I still enjoyed this band, so it's like Guster. They put out a record actually in 2010, Easy Wonderful, that I loved. And it was like a little bit sing-songy, like indie rock, but it definitely wasn't like Stomp Clap level of like, yeah, that I feel like that's probably one of my least favorite trends in music, Stomp Clap. And like, what I was actually talking to my boyfriend today about this, because there was a song that came in, and it's like, I don't really know how to describe the genre, because I don't think it is a genre. I don't think it's real. I like to at least pretend it isn't. It's like whenever people would add, like, I don't have any other way to describe it other than like chipmunks singing to like any song. Like that was prevalent from like 2009 to like 2012.
Like it happened a lot in like electronic and like dance and pop stuff.
Yeah, and like hip hop too, and I'm just like, why does this need to exist? Because it's like I like so many different varieties of music, but it's like, yeah, the chipmunk shit just that's worse than nails on a chalkboard for me.
I was really curious what Rate Your Music says what were the best indie rock records of 2010, just to see what would show up. Top 2 are Arcade Fire and The National, and those both immediately put me to sleep. So
yeah, those are very mood specific bands, at least for my experience of them.
At least they came across as more legit than something like the Lumineers or Of Monsters and Men. Or wait, was that the metalcore band?
Yes.
There's Of Mice and Men and Of Monsters and Men. I'm not sure which one is the folk band, but yeah.
I mix them up actually on a regular basis. I feel like I really do. I'm really bad about that.
Imagine going to a show and thinking you're going to see the folk punk band, but you wind up seeing the shitty mall metalcore band.
I would just die right then and there. That would be it. We're done, because I just wasted money. And I'm just so disappointed.
Well, unless there's anything major on these lists that you want to call out, we can jump into our album for this week.
Yeah, I don't have anything else that's like really, really jumping out at me on the list. So yeah, we can talk about the album. I'm good with that.
Cool. Okay, we got number 90 on the album chart, and it is Tiger's Jaw, Two Worlds.
I tried so hard to be the one that you would think about on your train ride back home. You told me you would love me better if I didn't always try so hard. And I don't feel so when things go anymore.
I'll throw some basics out there for the band. Tiger's Jaw are from Scranton, PA, and they formed in 2005. This is Tiger's Jaw. What? Tiger's Jaw.
It's Tiger's Jaw.
Why am I stumbling over that? Oh, it's because it's Tiger's Jaw's third full-length album. Sorry, that possessive S was throwing me. It's their third full-length album. It was released on Run for Cover Records, and the personnel on the record, it was Adam McKelvey and Ben Walsh on guitars and vocals, Brianna Collins on keys and vocals, Dennis Mishko on bass and vocals, and Pat Breyer on drums. And the album was recorded by Vince Ratty at the Skylight Studio. Adam would later go on to record under the Wicca Phase Springs Eternal name, I guess. Not really a band. And then Brianne and Ben would contribute to albums by Pedal and Better Oblivion Community Center, which came out like last year. And Vince Ratty was in Zoloft the Rock and Roll Destroyer, if you remember that band. Uh, he also produced albums by the Wonder Years and worked on nearly every major PA emo band for the last decade. So like Citizen, Hostage Calm, Pianos Become the Teeth, Title Fight, Turnover, you name it. Okay, Amanda, as the guest, what did you think of this record?
So, with Tiger's Jaw, I noticed, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tiger's Jaw put out 2 records that year. They had a self-titled and they had 2 Worlds.
I think it's the reissue.
Is it the reissue? Because I saw it labeled as 2010.
Yeah, I think let me double check it real quick. There was a reissue around that time. As the self-titled.
Okay.
Self-titled would have been 2008, because Spirit Desire was 2009, and that's when they really started to get hyped. So it makes sense for there to be the reissue.
Gotcha. Okay. Then scratch out everything I said first.
They did release, though, the Balance and Composure split that year in 2010 as well.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. Okay. So scratch all of what I just said. I'll start over. So Tiger's Jaw, this is a band that I have interesting feelings on, and Two Worlds was a record that does not stand out to me, actually, out of everything that they've released. I would say their self-titled and Charmer are generally the ones that I would gravitate toward. And it's interesting to me because I'll start with the stuff that I liked about it, and we can get into the rest of it in a bit. But I feel like what I like about this record is it does give kind of this mixed genre vibe that ended up setting the tone for the next decade as far as how people would experiment with keys and synths, in my opinion. And I can give it kudos for that, for sure. And it's interesting because I only had 2 tracks that really stood out to me on this record. The rest of it kind of started to feel very similar. But I really love going back and listening to songs like Let Go / Trash Floors and then I Saw the Wolf. Just because they're just really strong songs. And I feel like those kind of carry the record, in my opinion. Two Worlds is an interesting record, but what did y'all think?
Yeah, Dylan, I'll let you go first because I know you have an opinion on this album.
So we talked briefly about this record on our decade recap because this record is significant in my mind as a major disappointment. When it was first released, I listened to it. I pre-ordered this record. I was super into this band right before it came out. And so I was really, really pumped for it. And then I pre-ordered it and I listened to it. And I know that I listened to it a ton when it first came out. And then it just fell off for me. I just stopped going back to it. And I just remember thinking there weren't really any strong songs. And so I just didn't revisit it for years and years and years. So then coming back to it for this episode, a lot of that was reconfirmed. It was just the songs aren't there. There are little parts on a lot of songs throughout that I'm that's a pretty good little riff or whatever, but then it doesn't pan out. But this time listening to it, I think my biggest gripe with this record is how it sounds. And I'm very rarely the person who dislikes a record because of the production or the mastering. I have a pretty wide tolerance for low recording quality to squeaky clean recording quality. I tend to prefer something on the more lo-fi side, or at least down the middle between super clean Pro Tooled music and like bedroom recording, somewhere in the middle between those two extremes probably. And that's kind of where this record sits. Like it sounds like they were going for it, sound like in terms of their recording, but they didn't have the budget for necessarily like a top-notch studio or anything.
Right.
But
yeah.
in the way it's mixed, I found it really, really frustrating and really, really hard to latch onto anything because it all sits in the same EQ range and it's all cranked up really loud.
You're like saying everything that like I didn't want to open with, and I agree completely with. Because like, yeah, honestly, it's one of those situations as I'm listening to the record, and it's like I don't mean to sound negative. I usually hate whenever I start to get negative, but like, yeah, the mixing for it just crushes me, and I feel like these songs are probably more dynamic than they come across as. Because I mean, I've seen this band live enough times, and it's like, yeah, I think you're right. I think the EQ is probably cranked way too freaking much. And I feel like the best way I can put it, and I think you articulated it better, was I felt like I couldn't hear enough of the different parts distinguished. You know what I mean? Like I have like in my notes, not enough Brianna Collins. Because literally, if you just slowed down this record, they would be Joyce Manor. If you slowed down the record and took out Brianna Collins' like synths, they're literally just Joyce Manor. And it's like, I mean, no, not dissing Joyce Manor. I like that band a lot, but it's like it doesn't feel creative.
Yeah, I feel like her keys are actually like smothering a lot of the music. I think that's a mix issue because I do like her like organ sound that she has on like most of those records. Like I really enjoy that sound, but like I can barely hear what the guitars are doing in here. And like I know she's singing on the record at some point too, and I don't know where. Like
when you said that. Listing off the personnel, I was like, where?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because they buried it under too much bass. That was one of the, by the end of the record, and it was probably like just as much like mood because I was listening to it on my way to work. But I felt nauseous, and I'm like, there's just too much bass. And it's like the bass is moving a lot, but you can't tell what it's doing.
Right.
It's just like woo woo, and it was very frustrating to listen to. And her keys, I like that they have a keyboardist. I don't think it was used well on this record. And again, maybe that's just the mix, but
I think it might be the mix, and like also, so for me, my favorite bands have this unique way of taking like a keyboard or a synth or even a violin or any kind of like not guitar strings instrument, and they have this beautiful way of shaping it into its own voice within the music, and it's like it blends perfectly with everything that's there, but it still has its own distinction to it. Like I think about Slingshot Dakota does this like expertly. And Baby Got Back Talk, this really awesome band in New York, has a violin in the band, and it's literally like carrying a third vocalist with just how rich it sounds. And I think that was why I was a little bit disappointed by Two Worlds in a way, is because it's like those keys could be magnificent. And like I know that they can be dynamic because I've heard them be dynamic on other records, especially with like their self-titled and the way that they went around putting out that record, just the more dynamic music period. That they have accomplished in other records, and this record just doesn't show how dynamic their songwriting can be.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I also think I'm the one on this episode that has enjoyed the record the most.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Dylan was texting me earlier, and he was like, "Oh man, this record," and I was like, "I kind of liked it." So yeah, when this record did come out, I was very hyped for it. Like Tiger's Jaw was really buzzing. Like everybody was talking about this band. The self-titled was a huge hit. The Spirit Desire EP was fantastic. I still think the song Spirit Desire is one of the best songs they ever wrote. And then the split with Balance and Composure came out, and I remember thinking, I think I like the Balance and Composure side better. And they weren't a band that was really on my radar before then. And then this record came out, and I was just really let down by it. I don't feel like, compared to the self-titled, they didn't quite have the songs there that like made it that record stand out. But listening to it a decade later, I can't say I listened to it very many times in the past 10 years. So listening to it a couple times this week, I was like, I think I was too hard on this record. Like the first 3 tracks on the record, like a lot. I thought Return, Coil, and Recoil, and Smile were all excellent tracks. And then I really also enjoyed the song Test Pattern, especially Brianna's like organ solo outro at the end, where it sounds kind of like, you know, Haunted Transylvania music. And and then even like the last 2 tracks, Static and Thank You Noah Lowry, like they were the most unique sounding songs outside of I Saw the Wolf for being an acoustic track. I just said I saw the wolf.
I saw the wolves.
But I didn't like it 10 years ago. I was very disappointed by it, and now I enjoy it much more than I did then. And I don't think it's as good as the previous 2, but I liked it. I enjoyed it.
You said something earlier that I think one of the first things you said, and I wanted to chime in, but I want to come back to it, about this record being almost decade defining in terms of the way punk incorporated other genres. When I put this on, first song, I got a little bit excited. Like I had a little bit of more hope for it. And I was thinking like, that's a good little riff on the first track. It sounded almost like kind of like a later Gaslight Anthem sort of bluesy rock and roll riff. And then Coil and Recoil started, and I was like, oh, hey, they're kind of pulling from the weaker thans. Like, so maybe there's more to it. And then I don't think it panned out through the rest of the record, but it did make me think like this is kind of that starting point of sort of a turn towards like an Americana influence. I can definitely see this being, at least Tiger's Jaw as a band going forward, being influential in that sound. But I kind of forgot that this record did that. Because maybe it would just take me a few years to come around to hearing more of those bands. But
yeah, I think that a lot of bands started playing with similar sounds around this time and kind of started really just reshaping, I feel like, what it means to be like, because I feel like a lot of the early Tiger's Jaw stuff does have almost like this pop punk inflection from time to time, and it felt like they were a band in general in that time period. It seems like that was really redefining what that could mean and how dynamic that sound can be, and they did start to shift more toward like a variety of sounds, and I think that's really what makes them stand out to so many people now. But yeah, I think that was just one of those things where I started to kind of realize, at least listening to this record, that like they were playing with some interesting stuff, particularly when it came to like the keys and synths and even just some of like the chords that they were doing through there. I think it was it Dylan who was kind of talking about how like there were like little riffs or moments throughout the record that was like, oh, that's really good. Like that's, yeah. I definitely had those feelings throughout it where it's like, there were definitely moments and pieces of songs that were just like, that's going to mean something, or it's going to shape something either in their music or in other bands' music at some point. And we do kind of see kind of like little ripples of that, I feel like, in music now.
it seems like a lot of 2010 was like the more like the twinkly guitar riffs, and this was a little more, I don't know, a little fuzzier, kind of leading into that more garagey vibe that would happen in the middle part of the decade, especially in the Philly scene.
Yeah, this is definitely a precursor to what Philly would really become, and the Philly punk rock sound that would define the 2010s, I think. I'm trying to look. I'm curious to see what 2011 looked like. I want to see how immediately the general sound of punk changed. But the chart's not loading, so.
Can you share that when you get it?
If it comes up,
curious
and if it confirms a theory, then I'll mention it. But we can move on.
While you were while that's pulling up for you, I was looking at what else Run for Cover put out in 2010, and it was kind of a big year for them.
I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, like Run for Cover and No Sleep were like the two labels that like was putting out everything that everybody was listening to. So that year they put out Man Overboard's Real Talk. That's like the first big Man Overboard record. They put out The Wonder Years, The Upsides, which is a huge record. It was like a split release between No Sleep as well. And they did Hostage Calms, self-titled, and Transit's Keep This to Yourself. So like it was a strong year for them. And even just like in emo in general, it was like in the middle of that emo revival that everyone was talking about.
Oh yeah, big time. There was I'm literally just scrolling through the list for 2011 without derailing. There were some truly iconic decade-shaping records that came out that year, and I feel like 2010 felt like a teaser for 2011 in a way. Like, it's funny because I was talking to my boyfriend about this earlier when I told him we were recording this. And, like, he was scrolling through a lot of records. And, like, just for bands that kind of line up with our taste, we kind of started to think about it. And we're like, 2010 was the year where, like, a lot of artists that, like, would put out these, like, iconic records, they were writing in 2010. Or they were recording in 2010. And I feel like some of the things that they were listening to as they were putting those together, you would kind of like hear those elements. So like the music that came out in 2010 could have easily informed part of what we would eventually hear in 2011 because so many of these bands were writing.
Yeah, when we did our decade episodes, we were really high on like the first 4 years. Mm-hmm. It was like there was just like great record after great record after great record, and then we kind of hit like a weird little like slump around like 2016 through maybe 2018, and it was like a strange, like everybody was doing like dark wave inspired post punk. It was like it was cool for what it was, but it was like where's the fun music? And and I think 2019 was like a really strong uptick in quality, at least along in like punk and indie. I thought 2019 was a really great year, and 2020 looks like it could be like an even bigger year. There's a lot of stuff coming out this year that I'm very excited for.
Oh yeah. And
as long as they're not disappointing releases, which I don't think they will be, I think 2020 may go down as like one of the better years for like punk and indie music.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if we're going to see almost a similar effect too in the way that we saw 2010 inform 2011. Like, are we going to see that happen again in this decade?
Yeah, I guess there's that renewal, I guess, whenever you're entering a new decade, everyone's like motivated to try something different or like really go for it. Because I'm trying to remember how the early 2000s, I guess the early 2000s got side railed by 9/11. So that kind of like changed the mood of what was going on. But yeah, because then the 2000s were really dominated by like heavier music. So
yeah.
Angstier, emo, and yeah.
You had two options, really freaking angsty emo or like pop that is so drenched in like energy and like tension that like all kinds of tension, mind you. I felt like those were the two things you could kind of choose from the early 2000s, you know?
And metalcore had brutal breakdowns. Like that's all it was. We were going to hardcore shows around that time, and it was just breakdown after breakdown after breakdown.
Damn.
I don't think my theory was necessarily confirmed, but 2011, speaking of Joyce Manor, there it is.
Yes.
That self-titled record did come out in 2011. I do forget how long the Midwest emo sound really kept going in the early 2010s, just because of how short-lived like Snowing and Grown Ups and some of those bands were. But that sound kept going for quite a while. So I don't think we didn't jump right into the sort of Americana-ish or grungy punk sound, but it was definitely coming soon.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, when all those bands sounded like Nirvana.
Yeah. Right.
Well, unless anyone has any pressing thoughts on this record, we could give it a rating.
Okay, I'm ready.
Yeah. So we use a scale of 1 to 5 or 0 to 5, honestly. And we rate with any of the quarter points between. So I'll go first, and I will give this record a 3.75. If you would have asked me before I re-listened to it, I would have probably given it maybe a 3.25 or something along those lines. But I really enjoyed it this time around, and I think the lack of hooks may be the biggest issue. There's not very much that I feel like you could sing along with, but the music sounds good to me, and I like just the overall vibe of the songs. But Dylan, what would you rate it?
I'm going to give it a 3. I really do think it boils down mostly to the mix. I think that there could have been some good vocal melodies in there, but you just can't hear them. And the organ, I feel like the things that make Tiger's Jaw, the vocals and the organs are, they're just buried here. So it was pretty disappointing. I was hoping to maybe avenge this one in my memory, but no luck this time. At the same time, it's not like horrible. So,
Amanda, what would you give this one?
Oh, this is tough because I feel like I should round up a little bit, honestly. Because my first thought was 2.75.
Whoa.
But I feel like I should round up to a 3 just because I think discussing it with y'all kind of helped inform a little bit more of my thinking and how I feel toward it. I think it's a great record, especially if you are a fan of Tiger's Jaw. If you love this band and, especially unabashedly, of course you're going to enjoy it. I think it offers a lot of interesting things that would kind of like set the tone, at least for the bands that I would listen to going forward and stuff. And Tiger's Jaw is influential with everything they've done. I feel like they've really changed so much of the way that people perceive independent music. And, having a duo like Ben and Brianna together in music is something that has persisted through like decades at this point now. We can say that, which is wild to think. And so it's like, I want to give them credit for that because that's huge. And I think that the mix, like Dylan said, I think it really just crushes it down in my opinion, because I can't hear the dynamic pieces that really make Tiger's Jaw so unique. And I think the music itself is great. I've heard a number of these songs live, and they've been really powerful. I think about the times that I've seen Let Go Trash Floors live, and you hear the entire room screaming along. You feel like those just like heavy pieces of what makes this song great when you listen to it live. I think that a lot of the songs on this record actually sound a lot better live. And I think the music itself is interesting, and it's something that I'm glad I went back and I revisited in that way. But yeah, I mean, I think I've talked myself into a 3. Yeah, good band. Really made effort here. Not my favorite. Didn't change my life, but still good.
Yeah. Well, cool. I am curious. Do we rate stuff too high? I've always disagreed with how people rate things. And I
was just thinking today, do I need to retool my rating system?
I usually feel like the high end is like, did this change my life? Am I going to revisit it on a semi-regular basis more than once a year? And one being like, I'd never want to hear this again.
Yeah. I feel like it gets hard to distinguish your low scores. Like once it drops below a certain threshold, it's hard to find the quarter points and something that you just didn't enjoy listening to overall. So I don't know. Maybe I need to retool my numbering.
I hope I didn't trigger like an existential crisis for y'all.
No,
I don't know what I'm doing. My critical voice is just completely lost now.
I tend to think of like a 3 as well. Between 0 and 5, 3 is in the middle, so 3 should be average. That's my personal like rule. So yeah, it's probably not accurate. I think 2 is. Does that mean average is actually supposed to be on the lower end? I don't know. I don't know how critics view average as far as what is good and what is bad, but.
See, I can't imagine rating anything on like the pitchfork scale.
Yeah. No, that would stress me out.
Everything would be like 7s and 8s and 9s. Like it.
Well, we will get onto our EP then. We got number 189 on the EP charts, and it is Lemuria and hope I say this right, Chautauqua County.
I was practicing literally before this because I never know the name of the song, but like the actual song on it, but I love it. Chautauqua, you got it right.
Yeah. Lemuria are from Buffalo, New York, and they formed in 2004. That seems kind of late. This was released on Bridge 9 Records and is not actually an EP. We've run into this many times on this show, where the user base of Rate Your Music has inaccurately tagged something. This is really a single, because it is only 2 songs, and was released as a 7-inch with 2 songs. Anyway, we'll keep talking about it. The person
Were
on the
those songs on anything else, though?
Yes, the title track is on the album. It's on Pebble. The personnel on this record is Sheena Ozella on guitars and vocals, Alex Kearns on drums and vocals, and Kyle Patton on bass. I believe this EP and Pebble are the only records that Kyle plays on. Mm-hmm. And was produced by the legendary Jay Robbins of Jawbox and Burning Airlines fame, who I actually saw this week. Jawbox played in Chapel Hill, and I went and saw them with our brother, and they were amazing. So, yeah, 2-song EP. Amanda, what did you think of this?
Well, I should precursor this with the whole, I am a massive Lemuria fan. Like, this is a band that shapes so much of how I understand punk music, indie music. Everything that this band has accomplished has, like, shaped me in some way. So I got so excited, actually, when this ended up being an option because Chautauqua County is a song that I pop off to. And I've seen, and I literally, it's just like the minute they start playing that during one of their live shows, I just go nuts. And the best way I can describe how I feel about this EP and the song too is basically, okay, the local radio station I listened to growing up would do this radio contest every day where it was like, they called it hairbrush karaoke. So it's basically the whole concept of like, you basically dancing around in your pajamas singing into a hairbrush. And this song evokes that feeling for me of like being a child dancing around my house with a hairbrush, pretending that I'm just like cool as shit. And I know that the song itself conveys something very different from that, But the way that this band's energy just, it's one of those rare instances where when you listen to the recorded track of the song, you feel the power of the band who is playing it. And it's very hard to capture that live sound feeling in recording. And maybe that's a testament to Jay Robbins, but holy shit, I literally felt like I was in the show again for a minute, especially with that particular recording. And it's just, this EP is interesting because you get that classically contagious Lemuria energy out of Chautauqua County, but like the other song that's on there is just, it feels so stripped down by comparison in a way. Like They Are Who I Say They Are is just, it's a different sound to kind of pair it with. And I find that fascinating. Lemuria is really good at doing that when it comes to like song placement on their records, but they did it really nicely on this too. So I don't know. I'm just like, it brings together so much of what I love about this band, especially for kind of this era for them, because it has that perfect Alex and Sheena balance that like my heart bursts over. And yeah, I know I'm only talking about 2 songs here, but holy shit, they're groundbreaking for me, you know?
I'm so happy that Lemuria actually came up as an option whenever the way we do this is we use a number generator and we draw like a bunch of albums from the same year, and then we'll present that to our guests to see what they want to talk about. So a little behind the curtain. Because otherwise you'd be
what? You mean it's not random?
If it was,
we're gonna make our guests listen to garbage art punk
or Slovenian grindcore, or and I was disappointed when we got to once I got into listening to it that it was only 2 songs, because I really would have loved to have had a much more substantial release to talk about. Even like the EP from the previous year, Ozzy, I think would have been had a little bit more to talk about. Or Pebble itself would have been very interesting to talk about, and I do want to talk about Pebble in a little bit. But Dylan, what did you think of this EP?
Well, I think that there's still tons to say, just on the strength of the title track. It's great. If I got out of the car in a bad mood after listening to that Tiger's Jaw record at work, and then I got in the car and I put on this EP and was in an instantly great mood, that's a good song.
Yes. I had the same feeling. This is going to sound so terrible. So when I was starting to get frustrated listening to Tiger Jaw, I literally went and I'm like, wait, they gave me Lemuria. I'm going to go listen to Lemuria now. And I feel so much better.
And I was even I'm usually a little disappointed in the Alex songs. I don't prefer him as a lead vocalist versus Sheena. I just think she's a much better singer. But I think he holds his own on this song better than most of his songs. And the balance between the 2 of their voices on this record is great. I mean, she's singing all of the background oohs and ahs.
I love those so much.
That hook is fantastic. It's stuck in your brain. It'll be stuck in your brain for hours and hours. I immediately made a playlist just to feature that song.
Oh my gosh, that's so wholesome.
I was just like, I want to make like a gooey poppy playlist. It needs some fine tuning, but it's so good. The J. Robbins production is great as well. I didn't realize that was him, but that makes sense because he did record Pebble as well, which I feel like I had that filed away in my brain.
I think it was a big point in the promotion when the record came out. Like, it was very highly discussed that, oh yeah, J. Robbins is recording Lemuria, it's going to be so good. And he does something to that record, but we'll save that.
Yeah. But you also mentioned Lemuria being this super formative band, and like that resonates with me too. I remember listening to them constantly, like leading up to Pebble, seeing them play in like a record store and like a house in a living room around this time period. Those were incredibly formative experiences for me, getting into punk, getting into DIY, especially getting into DIY punk, being away from like the shitty hardcore scene, that I really cut my teeth on in terms of, DIY shows, and seeing great songwriters playing earnest music to a room full of people, like that was incredibly inspiring. So I've always held a really, really fond place in my heart for Lemuria, though I haven't stuck with them over the years, and we can maybe segue into that conversation because I think that's probably where you're going, Justin.
Yeah, I wanted to also mention, Amanda, you said that the B-side on here, what is the name of that song? I'm blanking on it. For They Are Who I Say They Are. How it juxtaposes like the two sounds of Lemuria, and like so on Get Better and the first collection, you would have these like poppy upbeat songs, and then they would do these slower, more like serious sounding songs, and this is like the perfect representation of those two sounds. And Pebble was another disappointment for me. So that record in general, to me, feels like it borrows more from, or it takes more on the B-sides sound. So it's a darker sounding album. It's slower in a lot of places, and the choice to not feature as prominent of like choruses that you could easily sing along with was just what really let me down. Because like Get Better and the first collection have classics that they still play to this day.
Right.
So, and like, like Lipstick and, I'm blanking on other songs. Hands in Your Hair. Yeah, but there's just so many like amazing hooks on those records that they still play live, and I feel like Pebble didn't quite have those. What is your opinion on Pebble?
I think Pebble is a good record. It's not one that I revisit. I'll put it that way. I feel like they actually got more of their mojo back whenever The Distance Is So Big came out. That I feel like picked up a lot more so from where Get Better left off, as well as even the first collection. More of that balanced kind of sound. Pebble just doesn't have as many songs that I remember. I still think it's a good record, but I think that it just, it didn't have that give and take kind of literal sound the way that they did on this EP, as well as they have done other times throughout their music, where I think because they are so emotionally heavy, even in their upbeat songs at times, you kind of need to be able to have a little bit of that really high and really low juxtaposed together in very specific ways. Especially for Lemuria, so that way it's like, because I can't stay down low for too long, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially with their music, and like Pebble did take you in some like darker places and stuff, and I respect it. I'm here for it. I like a lot of songs on the record, but I think ultimately, as far as like the way that I frame my love of Lemuria, Pebble just isn't quite as there for me. I mean, there's songs on there that I like, but yeah, it's not at the top of my list whenever I think about talking about Lemuria.
Is it this may be the best way to describe it. It's a good record, but not what you come to this band for.
Exactly. I think you just summarized what I think I was trying to say, and I love it. That helped a ton. Yeah, and like they've done so many interesting things with their sound. Like I actually really enjoyed their newest record, Recreational Hate, a lot, and I think I think you said it perfectly. Honestly, it's not what you come to the band for. I mean, they're great, and I mean, it's just not one I go to as often out of all of their releases. They have a lot of great music, thankfully, so I have plenty to come through.
I do remember revisiting or giving Distance Is So Big a listen when it came out and enjoying it definitely more than Pebble. I don't think I was as intentional about listening to that one, though, and so it just kind of didn't make its way into my discography. But I do want to give Recreational Hate a listen sometime soon, because that one I haven't heard at all, so I'm curious to see what they do there. And listening to, hearing this song and knowing that it's on Pebble, Chautauqua County is on Pebble, I am inclined to see what other songs are on there that are, if there's anything else that comes close to this song. So I might be giving that one a revisit sometime soon as well. But
yeah,
I think it's the strongest track on the album. It's the highest, like, Rate Your Music allows for, like, some individual song ratings, and it is the highest rated song next to a song called Pleaser. I don't remember that one off the top of my head. Yeah, I think it is the strongest song on the record, and it was probably why it was chosen as the single for the album. I didn't mean to interrupt, Amanda.
Oh, no, you're good. I was just agreeing.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to decide if we want to give this a rating and then follow it up with my next question, or if anyone has any bigger insights on this record or this EP that they would like to share.
I'm taking a look at it kind of again really quickly.
I love the cover.
Yeah, the cover is gorgeous, and I just think okay, I'll add just one more thing, and I think I'm pretty much wrapped on it. I think this is also a testament to how Lemuria's like songwriting goes, but I feel like so much of the lyrics within these two songs, I think especially Chautauqua County, just feel very relatable. They feel very connective, and I feel like going back and listening to it, because every time I was listening to it again and again, I just felt like different parts of it hit harder every time. Like, I think about when Alex sings Defining My Life by the Opportunities, especially the ones I missed. Whoo! Whoo! I get a lot of feelings just reading that out loud, much less whenever we hang up and I inevitably go listen to it again. It's just powerful songwriting. And to kind of echo what was said earlier, yeah, no wonder why it was like the single off of Pebble in that way. It's a really strong testament to Lemuria's songwriting, and this EP / like two singles. It might be, now that I think about it, now that I've revisited it this thoroughly, it might be what I use to get people into Lemuria outside of just like, because everybody wants to play like Pants and Lipstick and stuff, but It's like, I feel like this could be a really great gateway for somebody who hasn't listened to Lemuria before, listen to this particular release, because it gives the right amount of dimension to their sound.
Yeah, it's true. I didn't think about it. It is like it's the perfect representation of what they do. Well, what they do so well, too. Yeah, even just sitting here like talking about this record, I keep thinking of Sheena's whoa, whoa, whoas on the, on the track. It's so good.
I would marry that sound. I would marry her voice alone, but like, even if I could just have the whoa, whoa, whoas, I would be like, okay, I'm happy. Like, that's definitely a blast of serotonin to my brain. So thank you, Sheena, if you, by some magical chance, are listening.
Oh, I hope not. I'm always weirded out whenever the artists listen to us talk about them. Even though I tagged them on Instagram, but that's another thing. I'm gonna give it a rating. I'm gonna give it a 4.0. I would give it higher. I do think the title track is a 5-star song. It's like perfect song. But seeing as it is just a 2-song single, my brain won't let me rate it higher for some reason. I want more of this, which I guess I could just go listen to Pebble. But I want a more substantial release. We haven't repeated a band on this show yet, and our idea is to wait until we at least hit 100 episodes before we start repeating any artists. But I hope we get to talk about them again soon, like especially like a full length. Yeah, but I'm gonna give it a 4 just because it's just not long enough for me. And if you know me, that's a I'm always talking about how I wish things were shorter, albums were shorter, but I need like a 20 to 30 minute. That's perfect. That's exactly the amount of time I need for an album. But Dylan, what would you give it?
I'm going to rate it on a more appropriate for a short release scale and say it's a 4.5. It's great. It's just great.
Cool. Amanda?
So this is my bias creeping in, and I'm fine with it. 4.75 for me. The only thing that's keeping it from being a 5 is the fact that I wanted 1 or 2 more songs that make me feel just as good as that within the specific EP. But I know that I can just go listen to all of Lemuria and get those same like goosebumps singing into my hairbrush feels. So
okay, so we have a new question we've been asking. So if you could get into a time machine and go back to the year 2010, which of these bands would you want to go see? Tiger's Jaw or Lemuria? You have to pick one.
So I'm gonna. This is funny. I saw them on the tour playing together, Tiger's Jaw and Lemuria in 2015. But if we're time traveling specifically to 2010, first of all, that would way up my cool points because I was a nerd in high school. But I would say definitely without hesitation, Lemuria. Yeah, if anything, especially to see them playing like a smaller space. I've only seen them at like mid-sized venues, I would say. Like there's a couple of venues in Tampa, St. Pete, where it's like you could get maybe a couple hundred people in the room kind of thing. Definitely under 1,000. And I've seen them in those kind of spaces, and I think it would be incredible to see them in a more intimate venue, kind of like how y'all were describing earlier about like being able to see them in somebody's like living room or like, you know, just a record store or a smaller like DIY space. That would be incredible. And I feel like the closest I've gotten have been like those smaller cap venues or like Fest have probably been my best experiences experiencing Lemuria. And to get the more intimate experience, I think would be why I would do it, and also maybe to try to make best friends with Sheena before they got too big, because I adore her.
Dylan, yeah.
I still like this question, but it's way too easy this time. It's Lemuria, and I did see them in 2010. It was May 22nd, 2010 at 7 p.m. at the Edge Frat in Asheville.
Yep. I have that pulled up right in front of me as well. Lemuria, Nights on Fire, and Just Die. We were actually friends with the guys in Just Die. Edge Frat, yeah, it was a house. It was just called Edge Frat, just because that's what it was. And I'm so thankful for John at Headfirst Records for running Punks on Paper, because there's the flyer for it right here.
That's great.
I want to send it and in the chat right here so you can both look at it. Yeah, we did see them in 2010.
Jealous.
I would still see them again rather than see Tiger's Jaw.
Well, I also saw Tiger's Jaw in 2010. So I saw them at Fest. It's a little different. I also saw Lemuria at Fest that year too. It was at 8 Seconds. But
yeah.
Hate that venue.
It's the worst. But like I got close enough to Tiger's Jaw where they were enjoyable.
That would be the perfect venue to hear studio quality production live sound of the Two Worlds songs.
Yeah,
sounds like Breaking Glass.
Yeah, no. God.
So I saw them in there, and I remember them playing. The only song I remember them playing or two songs is "I Saw Water" and "Spirit Desire." I have no memory of the rest of that set. I have memory of waiting in line to go in, but I don't have any memory of the rest of the songs. But I too would also go back and watch Lemuria again. Yeah, I like this question specifically for the time aspect, because I like the idea of, so like the last time I asked this question, it was Echo and the Bunnymen and Government Issue in 1981.
Ooh.
And so specifically in 81, Echo and the Bunnymen were like at the top of their game, and Government Issue were still teenagers playing in like VFW halls. So it's to me, it's more interesting to think about like where the band is at their career, because like we could be talking like about like a late era Alkaline Trio record versus like an up and coming band that's doing house shows in the same year. And I would probably pick the house show, even though the other band is like maybe a bigger band or a band that I enjoy more overall. So I like this question, but yeah, I would do Lemuria again. Yeah, for sure.
I think if there's something special about experiencing a band, especially when they're in their more DIY phase and stuff, without a question, my favorite shows right now are going to DIY spaces. We're fortunate enough in St. Pete to have this awesome venue called Lucky You Tattoo, and it's literally a tattoo parlor by day, and it converts into a venue select nights for different bands that are on tour. And the bands that I've seen there that have blown up, I'm so thankful that I got to experience them at least once when they were playing on the floor in my face. Because it's like you'll never have that kind of experience again. It literally feels like a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like, I mean, I saw Oso play right before Unihon Mixtape dropped, like in this venue, and it was powerful. And you'll never like get that close to a band and feel that close and intimate with their music in that way again, especially if they blow up, you know? And like, yeah, I just think about those kind of experiences, or like, you know, the amount of times that I've been blessed to be able to see like Slingshot Dakota at like ground level like that, or you know, Expert Timing, when they play shows like that, it's super special and stuff. And like they're starting to get really awesome opportunities to play bigger venues with like bigger bands. And
yeah, they got a crazy one coming up with Against Me and Steph Chura. I was like, oh, I wish I could be there for that one.
I think I'm gonna drive to Orlando for that one. Honestly, I'm gonna try to see if I can cop a ticket and go, because that's gonna be a huge show, and they deserve that opportunity. But you know what I mean. It's like you gotta really like embrace those moments of DIY. So it's like, yeah, whenever you started to describe like the idea of like Lemuria playing in like a living room in that time period, I'm just like, hell yeah, I want to be there, because that's like my favorite space to be, is like a DIY gig over any like venue mass promoted show.
Yeah, like I would take like a tiny little like shitty PA in somebody's house over like a really decently EQ'd, you know, like mid-range venue. Like I would so much rather see the little tiny. It's just more intimate. And coming from like punk and stuff like that in that DIY scene, there's not really a rock star attitude going around. It's like you can just talk to them if you feel like it, and you know they are okay with you talking to them. It's like, please leave me alone. But it's not like, well, they're in the green room all night, and then we see them play, and then we don't see them again unless you're like want to hang out by the bus, which is, you know, weird.
Exactly.
But
It's huge.
instead, I can go walk to the merch table and talk to them. So yeah.
Or you can like find somebody like who's just like chilling outside, doing a quick like cigarette smoke or whatever, and you can just chat them up if they feel like doing that, and like, you know, of course respect boundaries, but that shit's huge. And like I think about how my podcast literally thrives on the concept of being able to get close to somebody, talk to them in person, and see it grow from there. So like I because there are bands out there who really do value FaceTime with the people who support their music, that has been literally the catalyst of my podcast growing as big as it has. I mean, I felt comfortable enough approaching like Carly from Slingshot Dakota after their set at Prefest one year, and we just immediately hit it off. She was kind enough to like reach back out, and like we recorded a podcast episode, and like the fact that I felt comfortable enough to go just like hang out with her, and like literally I think it was like a taco restaurant. Like I felt comfortable enough to do that, and she felt welcoming enough to like include me in that way. It's like that was the start of like a friendship that literally has helped grow everything that's happening now with Angry Grrrl music. So yeah, I just value the shit out of that stuff. It's important. And yeah, everybody save and protect DIY, I guess is what my banner waving is now.
Well, you are now perfectly in place to segue into your social media plugs. So why don't you tell everyone where we can listen to said podcast and maybe read some other things you've done.
Yeah, so you can find I mostly am posting now on Twitter and Instagram at Angry Grrrl Music. The girl is not spelled traditionally, it's G, 3 R's, L. But at Angry Grrrl Music for pretty much all socials. I tweet a lot. That'd probably be the Twitter and Instagram are probably the best places to find me. Podcast is on all streaming apps for where you get your podcast from. If there's any missing, please hit me up. I want you to be able to access it. And I have a website, angrygirlmusic.com, spelled the same way as that handle. For social media, I sometimes will post think pieces. There's a lot of really great resources there about awesome non-men and people of color and LGBT folks who are working on other projects in independent music. Like if you need help with accessibility or you want to support people who run other blogs, podcasts, websites, that kind of thing. I try to keep all that stuff up to date as I meet people. But yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. And like, I'm pretty sociable on social media. I will tweet as much to you about my favorite bands as I do as how pissed off I am about the state of how we treat marginalized voices to I'm going to tweet a long thread of GIFs related to Star Wars. So, I mean, I like to think it's a fun time. Come join me. It's great. We'll talk about all kinds of goofy and fun and important things all at once.
And we'll include links to all that in the show notes below. So if you're listening to this, look at whatever device you have, and it'll tell you, where to go. Amanda, thank you so much for doing the show. This has been a blast, and we'd love to have you back on again in the future, too.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'd love to come back. This was a lot of fun. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. And you can continue to follow us on all social medias. We are Punk Lotto Pod on basically all of them, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We have a website. It's punklautopod.simplecast.fm. And our email is punklautopod@gmail.com. We have a voicemail line, so call us and leave us a message. It is 202-688-PUNK. That's 202-688-PUNK. And if it's good, we'll play it on the show. But that'll do it for this week, and thanks a lot.
By your logic, I could claim that this rock keeps tigers away.
Oh, how does it work?
It doesn't work.
Uh-huh.
It's just a stupid rock.
Uh-huh.
But I don't see any tigers around here, do you?
Lisa, I want to buy your rock.